My name is Bob Mumford. I've been at this a while, and something kind of unique has broken upon me, and it's half humorous and half serious, but I think it's really valuable that you give me a little time to explain. The title's called 3 Traps for the Believer. And I have fallen in a few traps in my journey, some of my own making, some that were set up for me. And so a trap means that something is happening that shouldn't happen. And one of the things that is really, really important is in Hebrews 1, verse 3, Jesus is a display or a manifestation of God's character. I'm telling you, it's more important to cultivate and explain and impart character than anyone knows. It isn't legalism, it isn't more rules, it isn't something put on you. It's a revelation of who I am and who we are, and character is what honors God the Father. He is our Father, we are His kids. How we reflect His character reflects on Him. Not complicated, but it's true. The fruit doesn't fall far from the tree. I have 4 children, and I'm telling you, we have learned that. Every father, mother learns that because it's the way life works. And now, in the Old Testament, God says to Abraham, walk before me and be perfect. And I thought, well, perfect doesn't mean a human being without faults. It means, to the best of my ability, I want to represent God accurately. Now, amazing to me is that the New Testament opens with exactly the same phrase. He says, Matthew says, I want you to be perfect as your heavenly Father is perfect. And I thought, of course, it isn't without fault or without failure. We're talking a moment about revision, but what he's asking is when we see our faults, we address them. Now, this takes us to the most wonderful, wonderful chapter in all of the Bible, which is Galatians 5, and I forget, I think it was Luther who said, Galatians is I am married to Galatians. and N.T. Wright does an unbelievable job on Galatians. But here's what he says in Galatians 5:15. He says, you got to stop fighting with each other. When my children fought, I experienced pain that's hard to explain. Mom and I, my wife's named Judith, but Mom and I, Judith and I, experienced pain when our children were in conflict. And every parent feels that. And what I'm after is a quote from Abraham Heschel. He is an Old Testament exegete, opening the Old Testament with such clarity and impact you cannot imagine. The book is called The Search for Man, and he says these words right almost at the beginning. He says, heresy is not the problem, but But hypocrisy is what leads to corruption and injury. So hypocrisy means that when we see ourselves as hypocritical, we take revisionist action. When I see myself do that, I want to revise that. I don't want to do that again, which means I am learning to grow and mature in agape. My love for you is maturing, and I am able not to do some of the things that I did. Now I want to identify the three traps are in 5:26, Galatians 5:26. Every translation kind of handles them a little different. And so I've looked at, I don't know how many translations, just laughed out loud because the Greek is kind of sophisticated. And this is Paul speaking to the Galatian believers, and he says, there are three traps for you, my dear believer, and those three traps they're not complicated. Here's what he said. It is self-glory, making one another angry. I thought, oh man, self-glory, making one another angry, and the word envy. And he addresses this not to anyone else, but to every sincere believer. Now he's setting them up in 5:16 when he said, 5:15, when you fight with one another, one translation says you will be consumed. Mm-hmm. That is to God's honest truth. You will be injured. You will be destroyed, the translations go. When Christians fight with each other, we are consumed by one another. A while back I did a tape called Injured by Friendly Fire. And I would say, repeat now in this context, the time when I really, really wanted to quit the ministry was not because of the enemy or some kind of, it was almost always friendly fire. Other Christians attacking, denying, injuring, consuming one another. And so here's what he says in 16. If you walk in the Spirit, it breaks the power of the fleshly activity. Now, I'm going to spend a little bit of time on this, on the three traps, because I'm telling you, I work on these. I mean, this is not a Bible study. This is a half confessional and half you better hear me kind of a talk, because when Paul identified these, and I'm into Galatians and I'm seeing the beauty of the redemptive act, and then all of a sudden, this man of God, this mature representative of Christ and his kingdom says, as believers, we have three traps. One of them is called illegal recognition. That I put you down so that I can be seen. I remember one time, it's funny, it's real of some emotion in that. I remember one time in a situation where this man hurting really badly, looking for some identification. He said, well, at this time I caught a 3-pound bass, and immediately my self-recognition, my illegal recognition, and I blurted out these words, I caught a 5-pound bass, and I saw him wilt. and I saw how deeply I'd injured him. The only claim to recognition was this 3-pound bass, and I put him down because I needed the recognition. I was traveling with this man, a preacher, probably if I used his name, some of you would recognize him. We had 3 stops going to this country, and every time we go into the airport, over the PA system, they would announce his name. And I thought, and they would say, this name, would you please call the office, this name. And I thought, so the second time, I thought, that's strange. The third time, I said, why is your name always spoken at every... Oh, he said, before we get there, I call them, and I want to hear my name over the PA system. And then I recognized self-glory, illegal recognition, how serious it is, how I outspeak you, outthink you, and in marriage, my Judah said, you can out-talk me, but you can't change the pain that I'm in. And I thought, of course, because self-glory has to be right, has to be seen, has to be recognized. Above all, you got to see me and know me and recognize me. And that's the very opposite of anything that is a true believer. And then I don't want to try to overwork it. I just want you to hear, when you see yourself conquering the conversation, drawing the conversation to yourself, revise it. Stop it. This is what he said in verse, what does he said? He said, you cannot do the things that you desire. Paul says it just clear, right, in Galatians 5. Now what? The Greek word is beautiful. I don't want to try to do that now, but illegal recognition. The second one is provoking one another, making each other angry. Boy, I watched that with our children. And as soon as I picked one toy, the toy picked up, the other kid wants the toy. There's 20 toys, but I want the one. I want the toy that you have right now. So the fight starts. And so provoking one another. And I've been through several of those. No, many of those. To the point where I thought, who needs this? When are we going to grow up? When are we going to stop the hypocrisy? When am I going to revise the way I respond instead of continuing my own hypocritical, self-demanding way? Now watch. Provoking one another, right? Illegal recognition, provoking one another. Third one, serious word called envy. Matthew 28 says, for envy they crucified him. I don't care if other people get a Mercedes, but when you get one, I go through envy because I don't. Now what? Listen carefully. Envy is counting everyone else's blessings except your own. And when I stop envying, I begin to recognize how faithful God has been to me and to us and to our family. I don't need that. I don't want to go there. I don't envy your wife, your family, your house. I want to bless you. I'm thrilled that God has blessed you. I find this to be real. But for envy, listen, this is religious people crucified him for envy. I have a book at home called Envy, that's the title. German author. I had opportunity to meet him, and he got sick and graduated before I could get to go meet him. But the book is about 400 pages on envy. And I read it and wept because it opens by saying there's 3 guys in the boat fishing. This is in one of the islands in the Pacific, and he catches a bigger fish than the other guy. Immediately, he cuts the fish in 3 pieces, gives them each a piece. And the author identifies something. He identifies it as the evil eye. Envy looks, he caught a bigger fish than I did, and the boat is filled with anger and provoking and false glory and all the traps that we're talking about. And he just cuts the fish in 3 pieces and gives each of them a piece to stop the evil eye. If you could hear me, if we could see this together, if we could see the 3 traps of the believer, here's how they go. 1, I cease illegal recognition. Every time I see myself demanding, forcing, creating, doing stuff to be seen or recognized. One of the politicians just recently said, the thing that I need more than anything is increased recognition. And I thought, wow. Now what? It is powerful. These 3 are powerful. Provoking one another till my anger, your anger, and I want what you have, and I'm not happy with you having something more than I. 3rd one, envy. Now let me speak to revision. I don't know why we've lost it, but what has happened now is people are leaning into Christ's forgiveness rather than revising the way I act or respond. Revisionist means when I see myself envy, provoking, searching for illegal recognition, I find myself saying, Mumford, you're not going to do that anymore. No more 5-pound bass. No more taking the opportunity. No more putting others down so you can be seen. That's called revisionist. What happens is when you learn to revise, you start maturing in agape, and you learn to release and give and freely understand and very, very freely take the lower seat and then be invited up to the other one and all of this. Now, the 3 traps require us to learn how to revise my responses. I say, Father, forgive me. I will never do that again. That means walk before me and be perfect. Then Heschel's powerful quote, the hypocrisy ceases and authenticity, and life begins to appear, and we walk together as friends before God and in His presence.